Welcome to Sex and the Solo Girl. Join your host, her inner circle, and expert guests weekly for chats about dating, secure attachment, the solo lifestyle, doing relationships differently, and of course, sex. And here's your host, Janice Formichella.
Welcome, everybody, to Sex and the Solo Girl, and welcome to one of my favorite guest co-hosts from the other podcast, Breakups, Broken Hearts, and Moving On. Welcome, Lena Ehrenberg, a crowd favorite. Hello.
Oh, hi. You are my absolute favorite podcast host.
Thank you. I will take it. We have been creating content together for a while.
This is like what I say about dating. When you get to the point when you're not counting how many dates you've had, but you just know how long you've been together, that's a whole other level of a relationship. So that's where we're at.
Definitely. I value you as a guest and then a guest co-host, a friend, a coach. We've got so much in common, so much overlap when it comes to our worldview when it comes to our view about relationships, to our worldview as far as being a solo girl goes.
Yep.
I know that we are going to get into this in an episode about values and/in dating. And definitely we both value our independence, our self-reliance, our individuality to a very, very high extent, perhaps more than, your average Jane or Joe. And I appreciate that about you. And that's one reason I wanted to do this episode with you.
Thank you.
What I do at the beginning of the episodes with people is, where can we find you? I don't like to do that at the end. I like to put that up front. If anybody is interested in Lena or thinks that they might be, grab a pen and paper now or go to the show notes. Where do you want listeners to come and hang out with you online?
Well, thank you so much. First and foremost, I hang out online at my own website, which is lenaehrenberg.com. And that's a lot of spelling. So please do go to the show notes. And then on the socials, on Facebook and on Instagram, I am at Have More Love.
Absolutely. And yes, we've got a Formichella here and an Ehrenberg.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
Please do, head over to the show notes. This is not a spelling bee. Don't even try. We got you. And for those of you who are joining me on the new platform, what would you like Lena and I to talk about next? If you're on Spotify, go over to the poll or go over to the show note questions. Let me know what topic you'd like us to do. Do you have a dating, relationship, sex, etc. question that you'd like me to cover on one of the episodes? Send me a DM or email me, and I cannot wait to include, more listener comments, questions, and queries. Today, we are talking about values in dating / values and dating. And I immediately thought of you for this topic because I know that we live very value-driven lives. That's how I see you.
Well, thank you very much.
We really know what we are about, and we design our life around that. Does that ring true?
Yeah, I absolutely think so. And that's one of the ways that I was taught how to make decisions, because this keeps, in addition to values, in addition to how do I know who to date? How do I know if this person's the right person? All of those things, the two questions that keep coming up most from my clients is, how do I know who to trust? And where should I even begin with who am I looking for? That's really it. And also the other thing is, it's basically all comes down to, how do I decide? How do I know how to decide when I have a couple of choices or more than two choices? It was a dear friend of mine who said, well, you know what? Once I realized that any decision that I have to make, I just have to really tune into which one of these two choices is in alignment with my values. And she said, ever since then, I've never had trouble making a decision.
Mm-hmm. And okay, this is so interesting because it takes knowing what your values are and to do that. But once you do it, yes, it does really lead you in almost every realm. I also love the fact that you can tell very clearly what our values are by just how our houses look right now.
Exactly. Yeah,
All
exactly.
right. So besides decision making and relationships and who should I trust, why is it so important to know what your values are in life? And I guess perhaps we should differentiate. We have personal values and we have relationship values. There is quite a bit of overlap, but for me, they're a bit separate. For one reason, I'm not always in relationship, nor am I looking to be in relationship. And so I have values that just run my day to day, and then I have a separate set that come into play when I am getting to know someone or potentially deciding to be in a relationship with them. But
Mhm.
they're both important. So when it comes to personal values, it helps us to know ourselves and therefore love ourselves. You can't really love someone if you don't know them, and that
Yeah,
includes yourself.
yeah, exactly.
Mhm.
The idea of, oh, I'm so in love with this person, but it's really a person who you don't know very well. That's not really love, because if you don't know someone and you don't know their values, that's just really attraction,
Chemistry.
chemistry,
Hmm.
or something, or infatuation. That's really infatuation, which in and of itself, for me, contains this level of not knowing, because as soon as someone shows up as a human being, right, then all hell can break loose.
Yes, it definitely can. I can attest to that. So, and if I know I have a lot of listeners who are single, and this is the time to really, really, really get to know who you are, what you're about, how much you love yourself, so that moving forward, you can make really informed decisions about who you allow into your life. And
Right.
values are at the core of what we're about. I think even if you don't know what your values are, you still have values.
Mhm.
You're not really conscious of them. But
You're
if you
not
would sit back, you could probably tell. And even if they're negative values, or even if they're values that don't serve you, you would still have them.
right. And here's a really great test
Okay.
for knowing whether you're living in alignment with your own values, right?
Hmm.
What are your priorities? What do you invest your time and your money in? Because a lot of us say that we have certain values around certain things, but we're not standing up for those. We're not investing in those. And I'll give you one non-relationship related example.
Please.
Okay. Um, our world our planet has a huge plastic problem. I'll just put it
Sure.
like that, right? And yet there are millions of people in the world who buy fruit and vegetables that are already cut up. And how are they packaged? In plastic.
Hmm.
So if I have a value around ecology and being kind to the planet, I buy whole fruits and whole vegetables and I bring them home and I cut them up myself. Right? I look for ways to avoid plastic packaging because that's a value that I also make a priority.
But you would first have to identify that ecology or environment or sustainability is a value of yours. And then, so am I going to be true to myself? Am I going to have integrity when I say this is a value? Is it actually?
Yep. Yep.
Sometimes we say we value something, but then at the end of the week, did we actually prioritize it? Do we want to convince ourselves that it's a value and why?
Exactly. Yeah,
Another
exactly.
reason to know what your values are, why they are so important. And you know what? I love my listeners. I am guessing 50% of you out there don't really know what your values are. We're going to help you through that process. But I mean, let's get really real about this. Another reason why they are important is it keeps your independence and your identity once you do get into relationships,
Mhm.
whether they be, yes, dating or friendships or really anything. How do you stay true to yourself if you don't know what that even means?
Mhm. You can get around a lot. I mean, you can get around a lot in relationships. Not everything is a relationship killer. Not everything is. Sometimes you're just going to disagree. Two adult humans are going to come at life from, different angles, and it's okay. And sometimes you're just not going to agree with someone. Except what I learned the hard way, AKA a past relationship, is
Those are always the hardest lessons, aren't they?
those are the hardest lessons, but I feel like it was worth it. It was more worth it to learn it that way, and because it really made such an impact on me. And it's something that I was able to see and apply for myself going forward, is when there's a disagreement and it comes down to oppositional values, I don't think there's getting over that. And it's okay to have different values than your partner. You probably will. But it doesn't work when you both have values that are literally opposed.
That they clash instead of align.
Yes.
Yes. Yep. I completely agree. And I can't wait to talk about this. How much similarity do we need to have? And there is a difference between clash, alignment, and supporting. And sometimes the clash is going to lead to a lack of support for sure. And to your point about the people who we attract and their values, if we know our values, we will keep our independence in relationships, and we will attract people who also want to be independent inside of the relationship. Instead of just, oh, what are you into? I'm just going to merge with you. When two people know what they are about, this creates a wonderful, wonderful foundation for connection. And two people who have different lives that they love support each other outside of the relationship, and then come together as a couple in the middle, but not all of the time. You don't become one person.
Right.
I mean, a lot of people do, but I don't think that makes for a good long-term relationship. And that's certainly not what this show promotes. Also, when you know your values, that means that you've done a lot of self-reflection, and you're about personal development, and you love yourself, and therefore you have what we call a high vibration. And then you're going to attract other high vibe people. I believe that that's true. And as Lena already said, it guides the decision-making process. Making choices, not just about who you date, but friends, family members, all these things that are hard to navigate.
Business associates.
Oh, yeah.
Clients. All relationships. Any kind of relationship is as important as any other kind of relationship.
How you do one thing is how you do everything. And so let's talk about how you know what your values are. This might look different for lots of different people. There's different processes that people go through. I mean, I can talk about mine, but first of all, how did you pinpoint what the values were that you put on this board?
I think the first step that I took, and I was in a coaching program at the time that I was introduced to this idea, right? I did not spring from the womb fully formed in this way of thinking, right? I've had we've both had a lot of study and self-reflection and education and coaching and all of the things that help us elevate. And I just firmly believe that when one person elevates thought, we lift all of humankind with us. So I was introduced to this, and it was this process of basically lists of all these things that exist in the world.
Okay.
And just kind of just going through. So that, like you said, there are a lot of different ways to do it. I do this differently now with my clients, but I just seem to remember that these were exhaustive lists of just possibilities.
Okay, let's stop for a second, because I don't know about you, but this turns me on so much. This is also how I kind of whittled some of mine down. So, and I will put all this in the show notes again. So you would be surprised. And I do think that these resources are so helpful, because it wasn't really until I dove deep into the world of values work, I guess is what you would call it, a few years ago, that it really made me think, having looked at some of these lists, what people are actually about. I mean, if you would ask anybody, what do you value? People are going to say things like travel, honesty,
Family, love,
yeah,
and
kindness.
another one that I think is a big health, wellness. These
Okay.
are all values.
Well, let's read
Yeah.
from the list. Things that you might not have thought about. Forgiveness, goodness, involvement, communication, strength, entertainment, cooperation, charisma, leadership, fitness, professionalism, relationship. I mean, I've got a list 102 values long. Endurance.
And
And this
Janice is
was
not going to read all 102 of
no, but
them.
this is how I figured out that one of my values was beauty, because like anybody who knows me, once they hear that, like, oh yeah, totally, that makes so much sense. But I
Mhm.
didn't really understand that that was a value
Right.
until I started doing this work.
A really quick one about that because we're in it. So that you have a value around beauty. I do too. It's not one of my top five, but it's a very strong personal value to me, right? But here's how could be an oppositional value with someone. There are some people in the world who just aren't really fed by their environment. You and
Yeah.
I, and a lot of my friends, which makes sense, and a lot of your friends, which makes sense,
Yes.
we run in circles that are very fed by our environments. So our homes look a certain way, and our just our day-to-day experiences play out in a certain way because we do enjoy and believe that life can be beautiful.
And sensual. So for me, as far as discovering what my values are, there's this entire library online and this entire movement and field of thought around values work online. And for me, I guess if I could sit down, I could have I think it would have been hard, but to just say generally what your values are and without being really enlightened as to what your options are. And
Right.
so I have this list, and it's the similarities in the list online there are plentiful. And I think typically you get a list of 100 to 200 values. You just go through, and just when something lights you up, circle
Hmm.
it.
Yeah.
And then you take those and you
Right.
whittle it down and down and down until you get to 5. That is how I did it.
Right.
And my values are adventure, beauty, helping others, independence, and personal development.
Yep.
So
And that makes
very,
total sense.
very specific.
And you are in alignment with your values because I could have told you that list,
Oh,
right? Because I've known you for, I don't know, how long have we known each other? We don't have to go into that. But, it's the way you go out in the world and operate in the world. And so that's part of it. I thought of another way. While you're just sitting on your commute or at your desk or going out for a walk or at the gym or whatever, during your just average day, you could start to spur your thought process by asking yourself, what's important to me? All of you listening to this, you have values
already. Hmm.
already. So I don't want anybody out there saying, I don't think I have any values. What are they talking about? It's just that you might not have ever been introduced to naming your values for yourself.
But also there could be things that you value that are actually completely self-sabotaging and holding you back. Like for instance, being in a relationship or just partnership, avoiding loneliness, avoiding getting to know myself. Avoidance could actually be a value that you don't realize that you have. But you also, besides what Lena says about what is important to me, look at the end of the day, look at the end of the week. How did you spend your time?
Yes. And that's where you go back to priorities. If
Mm-hmm.
you say that you have a value around something, whatever it is, that's a really great idea. Do a recap of your week
An
and
assessment.
say, how much time or energy or money did I invest in this week in this thing that I say is a value for me?
Especially single people after a breakup, etc. we might not realize the patterns that we've gotten ourselves into and how they are holding us back,
Yeah.
and how the things that we are prioritizing in our lives are completely counter to what we say we want long term. And that's okay. That is
It is okay.
okay.
And that
Personal
is
development is a journey, and it starts with self-reflection. Even the things that we were like, oh shit, I didn't really realize that. That's where you start.
But that's also what you just said was really, Janice, the way we've all heard, if we haven't said it ourselves, we've all heard someone say, I lost myself in that relationship. That's how we lose ourselves because we give up what is important to us in order to prioritize what is important to that other person. That's how we lose ourselves. So when we're out of that relationship, we now have the opportunity to reintroduce ourselves to ourselves and to our values and to reprioritize for ourselves and say, gosh, I used to volunteer at the animal shelter every Saturday
This is blowing
morning.
my mind because everyone knows that I took this X number of years off of dating and relationships. And I did that, Lena. I
Wow.
specifically, I said, oh, I used to do all these volunteer projects. I used to go to the museums all the time. I used to read every day. I was like an advocate for women and all this. Oh, I feel a little emotional because it would like hit me like a ton of bricks once I really like said, okay, I'm not even gonna hang out. I'm just gonna kind of like look at my life and the mess that it has become. And I was like, shit, I don't even know who I'm looking in the mirror at because none of these things that I know are important to me are not anything I've been prioritizing. I've completely lost the plot for my life. And that
Yeah.
is
Well,
why I
here's,
want to tell everybody take time off. If you are dating and listening to this, I'm so
yeah.
happy for you. You probably also found me because you're single, breakups, solo, whatever. Embrace this time. You need
Yeah.
it.
Yeah. Yeah. Embrace it to get back to yourself too, and to make sure that you are living your life in accordance with your values, just like you are going to want to be with a partner who's living their life in accordance with their values. And because you will have figured out who that person is for you.
Yes, and not someone who wants to merge with you, not someone who wants to change you. Lena, what would you say that your personal values are? And then we're
Okay.
going to dive right into the dating aspect.
Okay, so I'm just going to say that these are the values that I have that I've identified as my top 5 values for now, because we all change, right? That play out the kind of things that have come up in relationships in the past. Okay, so my values are good, clear communication,
Okay, love like this.
personal autonomy and responsibility,
Go.
personal growth, elevation and expansion,
Oh my, men.
love and respect for myself and for others, and curiosity, a sense of awe and wonder.
Oh, it's so beautiful. So you're saying that these are personal and in relationship?
Yeah, because I've realized how, and I can tell you then how that translates to what I call essential qualities. So that's when you take your values and you go through another process to understand, okay, now I know who I am. Who am I looking for? Who's going to be a good partner for me?
Mhm.
So my first one is good, clear communication for me. Okay, so I'm looking for someone who's dynamic in their own communication, right? And I'm looking for compatibility in our communication. And that includes humor, it includes affection, it
Oh,
includes
interesting. Okay.
verbal, like talking, and to your point, and the topic of your new podcast, it
Mhm.
includes sex within a relationship. Sex is one way that couples communicate with each other.
Okay. So Lena is saying she came up with her top 5 values and then how this translates into how she dates with
Mhm.
essential qualities. that relate back to her values. Oh, see, this work is expensive, which is one of Lena's values.
Expansive,
I
right?
mean, you can
Exactly.
just go deeper and deeper with this. And that is why I always say, if you are single right now, do not let this time go to waste.
Right.
There is endless amounts of self-discovery that are at your fingertips.
And when you take advantage of this time and that self-discovery and figure out who you are and what you want, your next relationship is going to be exponentially better.
Yes.
That's the goal.
Oh, thank you so much, Lena. So I want to get into how to get specific about this. And I guess before I do, my process was, I guess, more simplistic or just different. It was just different.
It's different. It's just different.
My process is I whittled down my top 5 personal values because I am single at heart. I am solo. I'm dedicated to this lifestyle. I know for day to day what I am about. When I bring in other people into my orb, this is then a second layer of decision making that is outside of myself. So my relationship values are individuality. We've got to be separate people. Please don't suffocate me. Please tell me you've got your own hobbies. Sexual intimacy. I am highly sexual. I can't do it any other way. Healthy communication. Very hard to find, I have to say. Attention. When it's my time, it's my time. I'm kind of a princess. I'm not gonna, not gonna deny that. And protection. And that is, partially because growing up, I didn't have male figures in my life that offered me any of that. And I've found that's non-negotiable. So how do you think, I guess, kind of in a nutshell, if somebody, and because especially because I have lots of single listeners, I always ask people when they start dating again, why do you want to date and what are you looking for? And people are completely deer in headlights most of the time. So what do you think would be a starting point as far as people discovering what their values in dating are?
Look back if you haven't already done an evaluation of your last relationship or the last 2 or 3 or however many you've had. If you haven't really done that, if that's the first place, because so much of what I learned for myself that is important to me, I learned by not having it in prior relationships. So that was really the most effective. And it stood out to me. Yeah.
Yes, this is why individuality is I know that this is a value of mine. It was very easy to circle that one. I've a couple times dated people who wanted so quickly to talk about what it was going to be like to move in together.
Right.
I'm like, well, what? Like, do you know me at all? I don't want to live with you.
We haven't even been to a movie yet. What are you talking about living together? Right.
But I don't see that for myself. No matter how serious the relationship got, I think I wouldn't want to do that. And so, yes, that stood out to me as something that was a highlight when I saw that somebody really wanted that, knowing that I didn't, and that would be a clash moving forward with people I dated.
What we say to ourselves and what plays out, because as a coach, what does it come down to? Our actions come down to what we're thinking. Our actions come from what we're thinking about something. So in the moment, if I'm thinking, oh, it's just too late, I can't possibly cook right now, it's too late, I'll stop at a fast food place and pick up dinner.
That would be a no for me.
But I'm
dating someone, I'm like, what the hell is a fucking Burger King bag doing in your car?
Well, but that's the thing though. And you could be dating someone who really has a value around healthy eating. But it always comes down to the thought in the moment. And if the thought in the moment is, oh, it's too late and I'm too tired, then that value around healthy eating is in the back seat with the old burger wrappers.
So you just said that you learn something new from every time, and something that just came to mind. And I'm like revving up here. So I have a party trick. And then we're going to
I
take a
love
quick
party
commercial
tricks.
break. Okay. So as you know, I was raised in the Mormon church. And we have something that was called the young women's motto, I think. So every girl from 12 to 18 would memorize this thing and then stand up every single week and recite it. And it had to do about our values or with our values. So I'm going to say it. People get the biggest kick out of this because I still have it memorized. Okay. We are daughters of our heavenly Father who love us and we love or who loves us and we love him. We will stand as witnesses of God at all times and in all things and in all places as we strive to live the young women's values, which are faith, divine nature, individual worth, knowledge, choice and accountability, good works, and integrity. We believe as we come to accept and act upon these values, we will be prepared to strengthen home and family, make and keep sacred covenants, receive the ordinances of the temple, and enjoy the blessings of exaltation. All right, let's take a quick commercial break. We're going to come back and just take a look at how do you know that you have aligned values with someone? How do you know if you should walk away? How do you talk about it? How does this look in real life? I am passionate about the opportunity that a breakup gives us for a fresh start, but it can sure be hard to see that when you're heartbroken, right? I have worked with people all around the world to beat their breakups with my own 3-part process. I've created an ebook that guides readers through each step using practical advice straight from an experienced breakup coach. Click on the link at the top of the show notes and get your copy of the Broken Heart Repair Kit, the 3-step method for beating your breakup, at my special Sex and the Solo Girl release price of just $24.99. And remember, you've got this. All right, welcome back, everyone. We just got a little culty back there with my young women's theme. That was very fun. Oh, things from my childhood that I still remember quite vividly around values. So let's talk about good ways to know in the early days of dating if somebody either aligns or supports your values. What are some sure tells? For me, I will definitely say go slow in dating, have deep conversations rather than experiences and doing all of this crazy shit when you're just barely getting to know someone. Instead, create moments or create opportunities for you to just talk with the person rather than trying to make everything so exciting. Have chances where they can hear you and you can hear them, and then spend time apart and think about the conversations. And then as you go, constantly, continually evaluate whether or not what you are seeing and hearing matches up with what you want and also matches up with what they say they want. I also think the only way, I mean, we've said this like 10 times, the only way to really know if someone supports your values is to know what they are in the first place. So use that as a starting point and then constantly check against it. Like I said, this whole thing about me wanting to be non-monogamous, wanting to, live separately, wanting to be an individual, loving my self-sufficiency. If I date someone who just pushes against that so quickly, that's a sign immediately. Also, I say that independence is one of my top 5 personal values. So when I date someone who instantly wants to spend all of their free time with me with like little regard to the fact that, I'm trying to grow a business, I have a separate life, all of these things, and kind of pushes and pressures me to instead spend it with them, that's a values clash. I dated someone a little while back who completely disregarded the fact that I like to get up early in the morning and work on myself, work on my business, work on my podcast, and was constantly pressuring me to stay out later than I wanted to, even though I had said this so many times. And even when I would say, I wake up at this time of day so that I can do X, X, and X to fulfill my goals. Oh, you're going to be fine. Don't worry about it. You don't have to see anyone in the morning. Disrespectful towards my values.
And dismissive. I was going to say dismissive of you, not only disrespectful of your values, but dismissing what you just said.
Yeah.
right? So is that a person who's respectful? Is that a person who's open to learning from you and you from him? Right. So that's, to your point, one of the ways that you know is to keep your eyes open and to keep your ears open. And that goes back to, I don't believe in love at first sight. I believe in attraction at first sight or infatuation at first sight.
In the early days, sometimes we just get so caught up in, I'm so fucking excited to be around you because you turn me on so much. And we're going drinking, dancing, all of these things. And we completely don't even remember to ask the very, very simplest of questions.
I need that space in between. I need to go home after our first coffee or whatever date and see, what do I think about this person? What do I think about that hour? Am I remembering what we talked about? Am I kind of thinking, oh, next time I'd like to ask them this. Oh, he started to ask me this, right? What am I thinking about this person?
I went on a date with someone. I was living in Australia, and he accidentally, it was a good date. I did think he was a bit much, to be perfectly honest. But takes me home. It was, I think, like drinks, appetizers, takes me home, nothing at all. And he accidentally sends a text to me they had meant to send to his friend group. I don't know how exactly you would do this, except that, yeah, he must have woken up, in this flurry of thoughts about me. And he says, she's hot as fuck. I'm gonna marry her. At like 8 fucking o'clock in the morning. And it was probably like 5 minutes later, he's like, oh my God, like holy shit, my friends were asking me how last night went. And I said, I'm sorry, I don't think this is gonna work out. Oh my God. Okay, moving right along.
Because, there's so many reasons in that though too, but do you want to marry someone just because they're hot?
Uh-huh. Right? The whole thing was just completely like scary to me.
Yeah, exactly. So, but yeah, exactly. It's like for me, you talked about reflection, time to reflect about this person at the beginning of a relationship. And time of reflection for me is, I want to know if I miss you. Do I miss this person? That's part of my reflection. And I can't miss you if you don't go away.
That could be like a bumper sticker for this podcast.
Right?
How can I miss you if you don't go away?
I think it's a valid question.
Yeah, all of my listeners, okay. I will be eventually doing merch, and that's going up to the top of the list. Oh my God, I'm crying. This has been a robust conversation so far. Okay, so we know how to find out or how to ensure more or less that you may be going in the right direction of a values alignment. How can you know, or what are some red flags? What are some ways to see that you are starting to compromise your values? I'll put mine out there. And I know that this is not what makes sense to everyone and that this isn't necessarily accessible to everyone because not everyone has been on the spiritual path that I've been on, but I have a very intimate relationship with my intuition. And I have what's just called the gut feeling when it comes to things that people say, sacrifices that I think that I'm making, boundaries that I feel could be violated based on what I've told a person. And so I'm just going to put it out there. If you are getting a gut feeling that your values are not being honored, or if there is a clash, just please listen to it. Please. Mm-hmm. And you will know over time what that looks like for you. Maybe a physical feeling, maybe a tightness in some part of your body, maybe just like a bit of a foreboding that you cannot exactly pinpoint, but give that some credence.
I was with someone, we were, I don't know, a couple of months, 2.5 months into the relationship. And I will never forget, we were sitting at dinner and talking about something. And I can't remember what I said, but I said, well, we talked about this the other day and, I had said blah, blah, blah. And he said, oh, yeah, I don't, he either said, I don't remember, or just kind of gave a generic, And I said, wait, we talked about this. I asked you specifically about this. And he looked me in the eye and said, well, you have to realize that when you talk, I don't listen to you.
There you go.
I
Wait, what?
was so shocked that I said to myself, even though, okay, so here's what we do to ourselves. We purposefully, in my gut, I knew that he was telling the truth. And I knew that what's my number one value? Good, clear communication.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So I knew in my gut, I knew in my body, this guy's a no. Not only would he say that, and he's very proud of it. He didn't try to hide it. It was like, well, you have to. Yeah. It was like, what was wrong with me that I would think he would actually have been listening to me? That was how he presented it. But what I said to myself was, oh, he's got to be kidding. This is just one of those things we're going to have to work through. He's got to be kidding. He wasn't kidding. But I ignored my gut and reasoned myself into staying many more months in a relationship that didn't get any better than that. So
when someone shows you who they are,
believe them.
Yeah, I had this experience probably 2 years ago when I started dating someone new, and it just was rocky. And then we took a week off or a couple weeks or something. And when we got back on the phone trying to talk about what we were going to do, I said, you know what the time apart made me realize is above everything else, I completely betrayed myself. I told myself that this is what I was about and this was what I wanted in relationships. And I said, I let her down. And I'm not willing to do that anymore. And, no, it was intense and painful, not mostly just because, I had taken this break from dating and then I get into this relationship that really wasn't that great. And I kept on trying to convince myself, oh, well, you've taken this break. And so your next relationship must be great and make it worth it. I knew what my values were and what and how it was going to apply to my dating relationships moving forward, which I did not really understand until that moment. And it was a game changer.
Yeah. We have to be so crystal clear about our own thoughts because we are acting from our thoughts, not our values.
Lena, thank you so much. And again, we've got notes that we've both been taking as far as future episodes, future angles to take on this, mini-sodes that perhaps we could do, all sorts of stuff. This new platform is just meant to be fun, informative, supportive. So yes, what do you all want Lena and I to talk about next? Was there like a little tidbit from this episode that you would like us to expand on? Do you want to hear more of Lena's first date stories? Do you want to hear more of my insanity when it comes to the men in my life? Let us know. Maybe we can just come on here and just have little like, oh my God, you're never going to believe this type chats. And with that, everybody go into the show notes. Figure out what your values are. Figure out who you are before you try and let someone else or invite someone else into your life. It'll be a better relationship when you do. But you know what? It's more about the fact that you will have integrity with yourself and and your self-trust will grow because the most important relationship you have is with the one who you're looking at in the mirror.
Right.
You put that person first, the rest always falls into place.
And if you learn to trust yourself, you will be part way into having the tools to learn how to trust other people.
Yes. Yep. It's all internal. It is all an inside job. Lena, thank you for being such a good friend. Thank you for being such a good co-host. I can't wait till the next episode.
Thank you, as always. Thank you. And I'm very excited about your brand new podcast. And thank you.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Thank you for listening to Sex and the Solo Girl with Janice Formichella, the podcast for those who want to add more flavor to their relationships with themselves and others. If you liked today's episode, make sure to head over to Instagram and let her know. See you next week.